Hey guys, Chris here, and I'm a Ukrainian Canadian. Today is June 14th, 2024, and let's get to the news happening in Ukraine and Russia, shall we? We'll start with Russia because overnight the Ukrainians launched another huge long-range drone strike against Russia, and the most important target overnight was the Morozovsk airbase, which is located in Rostov. And the Ukrainians targeted this airbase because it is home of dozens of Russian SU-34 bombers. And as a matter of fact, this is the satellite image that was taken from today. But as of a few days ago, on June 4th, you could see several SU-34s, I believe it was 5 or 6 of them, parked outside. So I think that this is why the Ukrainians decided to strike this airbase. Now, as you can see, as of today, based on this satellite image, there were no SU-34s parked outside, but the Ukrainians also struck a hangar. And underneath that hangar that was destroyed, you can see that there's 2 blue airframes, which appear to be, at the very least, 2 Russian SU-34s. So we can confirm with almost certainty that the Ukrainians managed to damage 2 Russian SU-34s that were hiding underneath this hangar. And they were very important for the Russians. They're the main bomber that the Russians are utilizing to launch their glide bombs on Ukrainian positions. And Morozovsk is very important because it's pretty close to the border with Ukraine. So this is the main airbase where the Russians are essentially flying these Su-34s and then launching glide bombs and different missiles on Ukrainian positions or even Ukrainian cities. So the estimated loss here, because an individual Su-34 costs around $35 million USD, and that was prior to the war, and it's probably more expensive for the Russians to replace them and rebuild or build new ones because they have to pay 3 times, 4 times the price for the microchips, the components that they purchase from the West to build these jet fighters and bombers. So at the very least, it's an estimated loss of $70 million for the Russians. And furthermore, speaking of buildings going up in flames in Russia, overnight, also in Moscow, the Sukhoi Design Bureau, which is essentially the design bureau that produces and designs the Russian Sukhoi jets and also the civilian aircraft, went up in flames. And so around 800 square meters of the building went up in flames. So that's good news because that will also slow down, obviously, the design process of these jet fighters. So overall, great news. And a bad day, again, for the Russian Air Force. Now, the other big news of today is Putin, and I guess it's Groundhog Day for us because he's not really saying anything new, but it clearly indicates how desperate Putin is for a frozen conflict, especially with what we discussed yesterday with the sanctions, the bank runs, they're currently ongoing in Russia, and he thinks that he can fool the Ukrainians once again, which isn't the case. So what did he say? So he said that for the Russians to consider having peace talks with Ukraine, Ukraine must completely withdraw from the territories of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia. And also, Ukraine must declare its refusal to join NATO. And only if these conditions are met, then Russia will start or will consider a ceasefire. So again, as I said, who is he fooling here? Who will believe this dictator? You know, he has pulled the same move multiple times in the past. And the most important thing here, as I've mentioned yesterday, is that Russia doesn't come out with a frozen conflict, which clearly will be benefiting Russia. And so they can buy time and rearm. That's the Putin strategy, especially since he's seeing that his window of opportunity is closing, that time is running out because the slow economic collapse is currently ongoing in Russia. They're becoming more dependent on China. They're essentially a vassal state of China. And Russia doesn't have many moves left and not a lot of reliable partners apart from China alone, which is pretty much the lifeline of Russia. And again, who is he fooling, right? Like, Russia doesn't control any of these territories, whether it be Luhansk, Donetsk, Kherson, or Zaporizhia. They don't control them fully. So you're expecting the Ukrainians to just give up the right bank of Kherson and then create a new staging areas for the Russians? What the Ukrainians fought so hard for? And, you know, essentially giving up the capital of Kherson for the Russians and Zaporizhia city, which is a city close to 1 million Ukrainian people. That's not going to happen. And this is not a serious proposal for Russia. And again, an indication that Putin doesn't want to lose face, but he's getting desperate. And I think that we're seeing the weakness in Russia. They won't be doing this. They won't be extending their hand unless they're getting desperate. And I think this is an indication that Putin understands the reality, that his window of opportunity to seize the moment, have big gains in Ukraine is pretty much over. So the last news, which is good for Ukraine, is that Germany again announced a very important military aid package. So huge thank you to Germany. Again, Germany has been a leader in the past year in providing vital military assistance to Ukraine. And you can see that here, Germany pledges another 20 Marder infantry fighting vehicles and 10 Leopard 1A5s. So these are the older Leopards, the first iteration. And the most important here is actually the HIMARS launchers, which they're going to send 3 of to Ukraine, and an IRST air defense system, which is super great news. Again, it's reinforcing the Ukrainian skies. In addition, you can see some more logistical vehicles, tankers, bridge laying tanks, and some ammunition and shells, about 21,000. So overall, great package, and a huge thank you to Germany. Germany is a leader. We know that, of course, we can criticize Scholz by not giving the tourists, being a little bit hesitant, but Germany just follows what the United States does. The United States has to go first before Germany decides to go ahead with, let's say, providing long-range missiles or other things. And we've seen that time and time again, that Germany doesn't want to take the lead here. But Germany has been a complete leader in terms of helping Ukraine and really trying to support Ukraine's, defense as much as possible within their own limitations. So huge thank you to the German people, because that's additionally, we need to remember that Germany has been under decades of Russian influence, right? And it's difficult, right, knowing that there's so much interference from Russia and a lot of Russians living in Germany, that to have this switch of doctrine from being a pacifist nation to understanding what type of threat Russia brings to Europe is difficult. But thankfully, we're seeing this switch within Germany. We're seeing that now Germany is really understanding what's at stake here. And as I said in my previous video yesterday, Europe has awakened. Europe is ready to raise the stakes, including the United States, which is really helping Ukraine. With the peace summit, we see that more and more countries all around the world are backing Ukraine and not Russia or China. So that is really important. So that's the video for today, guys. I will try to do a map update in the next few days, probably over this weekend, if not earlier next week. But there aren't that many changes on the map. But I'll do a map update very, very soon. A huge thank you for support. I hope you enjoyed this quick update, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slava Ukraini!